Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to be going over Chapter 5 in the B.F. Skinner book. Chapter 5 is entitled Perception. My name is Adam Tinsley. Perceiver or receiver. This is the first subheading in the chapter on perception. Key points. Perceivers. Perceivers initiate action onto the environment. Guiding question. Do we act upon our environments? An example of this. Does the process of vision rather, result in the production of an image independently of our environment? So do we initiate the process of vision and then that produces the environment? Second point, the receiver. Receivers do not initiate the action. The environment initiates the action. Do our environments act upon us is the guiding question. Example, does an image from the outer world strike the retina and activate the process called vision? Skinner concludes at the end of this section that through an operant analysis states that the environment is independent of the body. Therefore, the environments interact with the person or the organism. So organisms are receivers. Second subheading, stimuli control of operant behavior. Key point. A being is subject to the three-term contingency as it relates to its environment. Therefore, the environment influences an organism before and after it responds. The stimuli present at the time when a response is reinforced gains control over the response. This makes the probability of a response occurring more likely when that stimuli is presented. Furthermore, if a response is reinforced only when a particular property is present, then the property attains exclusive control to the response through a process called discrimination. So in Pavlov's dog's experiment, if somebody had played a trumpet sound to try to produce the salivating, then the dog would not salivate because it's discriminated between the sound of the bell and the sound of the trumpet. So only the sound of the bell would elicit the salivating. Ontogeny always plays a major role in the organism's response. So that environmental and genetic history of that organism always plays a role. Additionally, the contingencies to which the organism has been exposed determines what they will perceive. This is a recurring theme throughout the chapter. Ontogeny. Conditions affecting what is seen. Key point. Condition number 1. Skinner begins the section with relating stimulus control and operant behavior to contingencies of reinforcement. We respond to our environment in ways related to our personal history and genetic endowment. Again, ontogeny at play. In other words, we respond to our environment in different ways because of what has happened previously when we came into contact with it. Example, two people are in a car, one is driving and one is a passenger. The driver drives the car from one place to another. The driver is more likely to be familiar with the route than the passenger due to the fact that she has driven the route. So the passenger and the driver interact with the route differently. So the driver having to navigate, turn corners, go around traffic circles, and what have you, will be more familiar with the route than the passenger and will be more likely to repeat that journey than the passenger would because of the interaction with that route or the interaction with that environment. Condition number 2. When a stimulus is weak or unclear, it is often clear that other factors are affecting the likelihood that a person will see a thing in a given way. Example, A slight noise is at night is heard as a burglar or a mouse by those who would respond vigorously to burglars or mice. Consider, has this person heard slight noise in the past and has a burglar and it was a burglar or a mouse? So the stimulus, the slight noise might not be clear as far as what might be interacting with that environment. The person is going to interact with that environment depending on how they've interacted with that environment before. If they have experience with burglars or mice, they might be more likely to respond in a way that's consistent with the response to a burglar or a mouse, especially if the noise or the stimulus is not clear or it might be weak or vague. Condition number 3. Level of deprivation makes a difference in what is perceived. Example, a person might mistake a noise for a telephone if they are awaiting an important phone call. So if you're deprived of phone calls or time or what have you, you might be more anticipatory of an important phone call or important sound. You might think that any sound might be the sound that you're waiting for. Experience versus reality. Key points. Skinner takes a metaphysical approach to stimuli that can't always be described strictly in physical terms. Behaviorism is said not to account for how a person experiences, interprets, or assigns meaning to a situation. Skinner believes that to account for a person's experience, one has to examine their behavior with respect to that experience. The only way to account for a person's experience in a Skinnerian way is to take into account that person's genetic or environmental history. The important differences in how people experience reality is through how they behave or respond to their experience. People's behavior only differs when differences in their past contingencies exist. The copy theory. Key point. This is a theory of perception in which it is posited one never sees the world itself and contends that we only interact with copies because the world is filtered through our senses. Skinner asserts that copy theory is most plausible if the argument is made in relation to visual stimuli. When it comes to our other senses and the ways that one perceives the world, then copy theory is less convincing. The ultimate conclusion with regard to copy theory is that the environment is and always has been outside of the human body, and that a stimulus present when a response is reinforced acquires some control over the response, meaning that to appropriately consider copy theory, one has to examine the contingencies responsible for stimulus control. Seeing in the absence of the thing seen. Key point. This section on perception deals with the relevance of dreams, fantasies, and imagination in behaviorism. Skinner describes these processes in the spirit of reinforcement. Hence, if we are reinforced by seeing a place, Venice in his example, we are more likely to engage in that behavior, which is the behavior of seeing a place, Venice, in our memory or imagination. This process can even take place when there is very little in the immediate setting which resembles the place that we imagine. Conclusion. Seeing does not require a thing being seen. Mind and stimulus control. Key points. This section of the chapter in perception deals with the meaning of the word mind and the way in the English language it is often used in various parts of speech. At least that's how it begins. Skinner seems to settle on a definition on the mind as a place in which things are perceived, but only through the reporting of stimuli, not sensations. There is a review of the type of perceptions and self knowledge that can be accessed in the mind. Skinner asserts that if there are no copies of things inside the body at any time, then perception relies heavily on the act of seeing. Mind and stimulus control continued. Perception also can be mediated through tangible interactions. Dreams are not reliable perceptions because the conditions for self observation cannot be met. One can recognize something that they have cognized in the past. Conclusion: once one investigates the contingencies that control their behavior, self knowledge about the stimuli that control those contingencies become available.